What if your body was not just punished, but used as a message to all women who dared to disobey? Imagine a room carved from ancient stone, buried beneath a medieval fortress. The air is thick with dampness and secrets. Along the far wall, under the flickering amber glow of a dying torch, stands something grotesquely beautiful. At first glance, it resembles armor. Ornate, curved, shaped with intention, but its dimensions are unmistakable. This was not made for a soldier. It was not crafted for defense. This was built for a woman. Its iron edges align with the softness of the female form. Its purpose, not swift execution, but degradation, humiliation, and pain. The device does not kill immediately. It lingers. It stretches suffering into hours, sometimes days, using the body as both canvas and message. A message sent not just to the victim, but to all who watched. This was not justice. It was theater. A macabre performance designed to remind every woman that her body was not hers, that obedience was survival, and silence her only refuge. Before we go further into this dark chapter of history, consider subscribing to History Remains. Your support helps us bring more of these untold stories to light. Because these devices, crafted by men, sanctioned by faith, and fed by fear, tell a story deeper than iron and flame. They reveal how cruelty can be justified, how suffering can be disguised as morality, but who forged such instruments? And why did Europe accept their silence for so long? To answer that, we must begin where it all took root, in a world built on control, shame, and the fear of female power. To understand how a device could be made specifically to torment women, we must first understand the world that allowed it, no demanded it. Medieval Europe was not governed by logic or fairness. It was ruled by doctrine, by fear, and by a hierarchy in which women were placed firmly at the bottom. In medieval thought, woman was seen as man's burden, spiritually weak and dangerously tied to the physical world. Eve's defiance in Eden became a symbol of betrayal, a story that justified centuries of control. The church preached, the law enforced, and society obeyed. Women were to be watched, restrained, and punished for even the smallest act of defiance. Under feudal law, obedience was demanded and disobedience brutalized. Men might pay a fine for violence, but women faced the whip, the brand, or public humiliation. Speaking out, dressing boldly, refusing marriage, or being accused by a jealous neighbor could all bring punishment. Female independence was seen as a threat to divine order itself. Torture became a weapon of discipline, a way to erase the idea of female power. Among the most horrifying instruments was the breast ripper, for curved iron claws designed to tear flesh from bone. Often heated until glowing red, it was clamped onto a woman's breast and ripped away. The pain was unbearable, the damage usually fatal. Public executions turned her suffering into spectacle, her body into warning. Chronicles from 14th century Germany describe women mutilated before being hanged. Witch-hunting manuals encouraged punishing women in the organs where they had sinned most, sanctifying cruelty as divine correction. This violence was symbolic as much as physical. The womb gives life, the breast sustains it. To destroy them was to desecrate creation itself, turning nurture into shame. It taught that love, fertility, and womanhood could all be used against their owner, that virtue, once questioned, could never be reclaimed. But pain alone was not always enough. For invisible sins came a quieter instrument, the Pear of Anguish. Small, metallic, and smooth, it opened like a flower when a screw was turned, tearing silently from within. Used against women accused of abortion, desire, or defiance, it was inserted into the mouth or the womb. The tearing began wordlessly, the screams followed. Many lived, but broken, unable to bear children, or to speak clearly again. In cold stone chambers, priests watched as torturers turned the screw, calling it purification. Yet there was no holiness in it. The pear was not an instrument of faith, but of erasure, built to destroy not only the body, but the very idea of a woman's voice. It attacked what society feared most, the woman who could speak, choose, and create. A tool to silence the womb, the mouth, and the soul. But not all women screamed, some endured. For them, society created something worse, a prison of iron shaped like a garment. At first glance, it looked like armor, molded to a woman's form, wrapping around her ribs and hips like a knight's breastplate. But this was no protection. This was punishment. The Iron Corset, made not for battle but for obedience, turned the female body into a cage. Locked with screws and rivets, it pressed against soft skin with every breath. Some had spikes inside, others were weighted, pulling on the spine and crushing the chest. Breathing became agony, sleep impossible. Bruising, bleeding, and broken ribs followed. Yet death was not the purpose. It was correction. Outspoken wives, defiant daughters, suspected witches, or women who embarrassed powerful men were forced into it. The corset was portable. She wore her punishment while she worked, cooked, and cleaned, each gasp a reminder of obedience. In France and Italy, young girls wore it for moral reform. In Germany, it disciplined the impure. Husbands often ordered it themselves. No court, no defense, only silence. The message was clear. The corset turned femininity itself into confinement. The body became both the battleground and the prison. Living inside your punishment meant living without relief. And still, for women who dared to speak too loudly, there was something even worse, the Scold's bridle. Forged of iron, shaped like a cage for the head, it locked around the skull, pressing against the cheeks and jaw. Inside, a sharp spike rested on the tongue. Any attempt to speak drove the spike deeper. It did not kill, it humiliated. Women were paraded through the streets, bells attached so no step went unheard. Laughter followed. Their crime, speaking too much, arguing, gossiping, or defying authority. Records from 16th century Edinburgh describe women forced to wear it for disturbing the peace or arguing with neighbors. No trial, no defense, only silence. The spike was symbolic. It pierced the chain of knowledge passed from mothers to daughters. Speech became a crime, and silence the sentence. Even when removed, the wound remained unseen, but eternal. There are no confirmed records of its use in the Middle Ages. No court documents, no survivor testimonies. The earliest known example was assembled in the 1800s in Nuremberg, long after the supposed era of its horrors. And yet, the legend endures. Particularly disturbing are the gendered variations that emerged as the myth grew. Female Iron Maidens, devices shaped with exaggerated curves, breasts molded into the metal. The interior spikes positioned with obscene precision appeared in paintings, exhibitions, and lurid fiction. These were never used. They were imagined, invented. And perhaps that makes them even more chilling, because they were not forged in iron. They were forged in fantasy. A fantasy where the female body remains the site of punishment. Where suffering is not just inflicted, but sexualized. Where cruelty is displayed behind glass with a price of admission. What does it say about us that we made up a torture device just to imagine women inside it? Some museums still display these objects, knowing full well they are fabrications. Some tourist guides still whisper stories of maids in iron being crushed inside them. The myth survives because it feeds something darker than truth. It feeds the idea that women deserve to be punished not only for what they do, but for what they are. Fiction becomes memory, myth becomes history. And yet beneath the falsehood lies a deeper truth. Society never needed the Iron Maiden, because it already had real devices, real pain, real women whose suffering needed no embellishment. So why are we so fascinated with pain, especially when it is aimed at women? Maybe because we have not truly reckoned with the structures that allowed such cruelty to be seen as justice. Maybe because deep down we are still haunted by how easily violence can be made into entertainment. And maybe the Iron Maiden, real or not, still stands for something very real. A culture that turns silence into virtue, submission into law, and womanhood into a cage. These devices were not born from madness. They were engineered, sanctioned, and applied by systems that believed their use was necessary. They were not tools of random cruelty, but instruments of control. And they were aimed with cold precision at women. Each spike, each shackle, each twisted screw was meant to send a message that the female body was not sacred, not sovereign, not safe, that obedience was survival, that silence was virtue. The breast ripper, the Pear of Anguish, the Iron Corset, the Bridle, these were not just punishments. They were performances, public rituals designed to strip not only the flesh but the identity, the dignity, and the spirit from women deemed unruly. And yet they are rarely remembered, reduced to footnotes in textbooks, disguised as curiosities in museums, or rewritten entirely into myths like the Iron Maiden. But we must ask ourselves, what does it say about a society that invents devices just to break women? And more importantly, if we forget these tools, do we also forget the women they silenced?